Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahweh Shai is what the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahweh Shai. And pretty much I want to do this video giving you examples according to the Bible of what happens when the heathen nations inhabit our land. Because you have to understand, when you read in the book of Revelation, the 21st chapter, it clearly tells you that the promised land of Israel, as well as, you know, the gates of the tribes, that's strictly our inheritance. That's only for the seed of the promise to inherit, which is the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. Our seed line makes up the 12 tribes of Israel. So if you don't come from that seed, then there's no way you can inhabit the promised land of Israel when Yahweh Shah returns back. There's no way you could be a part of the new covenant. So I'm going to show you some examples, because all of the heathen nations, they pretty much do the same thing, just with a different name. They all have similar customs that trace back to idolatry and fornication. All right? And then remember, the scriptures say that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of the Most High. The heathen nations, they will never be changed. All right? There's plenty of scriptures telling you how they're going to have to walk up to the mountain of Jerusalem and learn of our ways, because we are going to be a nation of kings and priests. We're going to have to teach the heathens under our authority the law, statutes, and commandments. But since they're going to be flesh and blood, since they're going to be in the flesh, that means that they're going to be sinning. So we're going to have to correct them and implement the law on them with no mercy. All right? So this is one of my lessons I got lined up here, right? So this is Ezekiel. I'm going to start at chapter 36. I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, "Also, thou son of man, prophesy." When you prophesy, that means you're saying something before it actually takes place, before it becomes current events, before it becomes reality, before it manifests, right? "Unto the mountains of Israel, and say, Ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord." The word Lord is in caps, so it's the God of Israel's name in the Paleo Hebrew, Yahweh. All right? "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because the enemy have said against you." Now, this is the Lord talking about the promised land of Israel. All right? Our inherited land. So this is what the Lord is saying. "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because the enemy." Who is our enemies? The 17 heathen nations. All the heathen nations are our enemies. What makes them our enemies? Because of their religious practices, their religious customs, their religious rituals, the philosophies they believe in. All right? The gods they worship, idolatry, fornication. Their lifestyle and their culture will separate us from our God. That's why the Most High, in the past, he said not to deal with their women. All right? Because the action of love, of loving these heathen women, it could lead to idolatry. All right? It could lead to fornication. So it says, "The enemy have said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are ours in possession." I've seen Jerusalem commercials talk about go to vacation to Jerusalem, come to Tel Aviv. I've seen commercials on this. All right? Jerusalem is supposed to be a holy land and inherited by the holy people, which is only the Israelites. But because of our disobedience, the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 came upon the seed line of Israel. The Lord kicked us out of our land. When you read 2 Kings, the 17th chapter, which, by the way, I have that, it tells you that what? That the Lord Yahweh, he rejected all the seed of Israel, meaning that he kicked us out of the promised land of Israel. And he had heathen nations to inhabit the land, but they couldn't keep our laws. So then what did the Most High allow? He allowed the heathen nations to learn from the priests, the Levitical priests. But then they still didn't listen to the Lord. So the Lord will have, particular things happen, like lions coming to eat them up. All right. So it says, even the ancient high places are ours in possession. All our ancient artifacts, right? Things that we once used to own, now the heathen nations have it. And now they got it on display for vacation. Now they got tourism in our land. They defiled our land. They got that Wailing Wall. Where's the Wailing Wall at in the scriptures? That's not in the scriptures. What law or what custom of ours tell you to wear a yarmulke? Continuing on. So they have control of our land. That's why they got a prime minister, right? Verse 3, it says, therefore prophesy and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because they have made you desolate. Yeah, our land is desolate. That's why the land of Israel, they need so much aid from America. All right, because that land is not blessed. It's not a land flowing with milk and honey, meaning it doesn't have an abundance of resources yet. It says, and swallowed you up on every side, meaning the whole inheritance, all of the promised land of Israel is swallowed up by the heathen nations. You got the Palestinians here. You got the Amalekites here. You got the Philistine Jews there. You got the indigenous Hamite Africans there. You got all these different nations fighting over our land, and it doesn't belong to them. All right? They have swallowed you up on every side, that ye might be a possession, meaning our land, right? Because they got this thing called the Greater Israel Project, in which the Amalekites, which are Edomites, they are trying to seize the whole inherited promised land of Israel. All right? It says, unto the residue of the heathen. When you read in the scriptures, after the flood, there was 18 nations that was established. The chosen seed line is who? The Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. All right? And then you have the 17 heathen nations that the Lord is not dealing with. It says, and ye are taken up in the lips of talkers. Yeah, they mock us. Oh, look at them Israelite guys over there. Look at them. We stole their identity. We stole their land. Look at them trying to teach their people. Look how ignorant their people are. Don't even want to listen to the fact that the gospel is for them. They're rejecting their own culture, their own identity. Look at these dumbasses, right? Look at the condition that they're in. It says, of talkers, and are an infamy of the people. Exactly. I want to read that in the NLT version. This is Ezekiel chapter 36 and verse 3. Therefore, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of the sovereign Lord. He speaks to the hills and mountains and ravines and valleys, and to the ruined wastes and long deserted cities that have been destroyed and mocked by surrounding nations. All right? So that's what's going on. These nations, they're mocking us, right? That goes back to what? The curses. It says that thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword amongst all nations, where the Lord thy God is going to lead thee. Yahweh thy God is going to lead thee. So that's what's going on. It don't matter if it's Saudi Arabia, Yemen, India, America, Britain, Europe, no matter where it's at in the world, Spain, all these nations have racist words for us, all right? They have racist surnames to degrade our people. They mock us, right? It says back in the KJV, verse 4, therefore, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord Yahweh. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, to the mountains and to the hills and to the rivers and to the valleys, to the desolate wastes and to the cities that are forsaken, which became a prey and a derision to the residue of the heathen that are round about. Exactly, because the true chosen people, they was exiled out of their land. All right. Verse 5. It says, therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen. So the Lord is against all you heathen nations for what you have done to the children of Israel. All right. But the main nation being who? The Edomites, the so-called white man in Selah. It says, yep, and against all Idumea, right? All Idumea. Idumea is the Greek way of saying Edom. When you read it in the NLT version, right, it's going to say Edom. Ezekiel 36:5. And this is what the sovereign Lord says. My jealous anger burns against these nations, especially Edom, because they have shown utter contempt for me by gleefully taking my land for themselves as plunder. When did they do that? They did that through the Balfour Declaration, all right? That's how they gained control over the land. And plenty of brothers, including myself, have done plenty of videos on this topic. Even bringing up a guy named Theodore Herzl, which that was his dream to establish a Zionist state or a Zionist land, all right? He died before he could see his dream come to pass, all right? But it came to pass decades later in the form of what? The Balfour Declaration, all right? So the scriptures, it don't lie. It says, therefore prophesy, this is the NLT, to the hills and the mountains, the ravines and valleys of Israel. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am furious that you have suffered shame before the surrounding nations. All right? So now, I want to read in the KJV is better for this. Ezekiel 36:6 now. Ezekiel 36:5. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen. What's the fire of jealousy? What Iran and Russia is going to launch on them, because that land is going to be destroyed according to Bible prophecy. Ezekiel 36, what I'm reading, Ezekiel the 38th and the 39th chapter concerning World War III prophecies. All right? During World War III, what's going to be destroyed? You're going to have a lot of lands that's hit by nuclear missiles and bombs and the impact of war, buildings being destroyed. But as far as total lands being destroyed, it's going to be Babylon the Great, which is America, right? You're going to have different surrounding areas around America get hit. You're going to have the surrounding waters is going to dry up, because it said what? That desert creatures is going to dwell here. So how the desert creatures going to dwell here? How are they going to pass over the oceans? It's going to dry up, all right? Because the nuclear missiles is going to be hitting all over the different warheads. It's going to be drying things up, all right? So it's going to be like Pangea. So it goes on to say, so you're going to have the state of Israel destroyed. That's the point. But that land is going to get built back up when you read all throughout the scriptures, mainly beginning with Isaiah, the 60th chapter, and plenty of other scriptures, all right? So it says, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea, all the sea line of Edom. Even you Edomites that feel like, oh, I didn't do nothing during slavery. It wasn't me. It was my ancestors or my ancestors' free slaves. Yeah, maybe they did, right? But if your seed line goes back to Edom, the Lord is talking to you and he can't stand you, all right? And y'all have a great judgment that's coming your way. It says, and against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession. They did that with the Balfour Declaration, all right? So it goes on to say, with the joy of all their heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey, all right? And they have the biggest gay parade over there. Look, I just typed this in, right? Israel has the biggest gay parade. This is what popped up. It says the Tel Aviv Pride Parade is recognized as one of the largest LGBTQ, all that shit, celebrations in the world, and the largest in the Middle East. Why the hell is it the largest in the Middle East and it's the Holy Promised Land? Come on. Let's go down here. I want to get to the point. Regional position. While Sao Paulo Pride, which that's Brazil, if y'all don't know, holds the world record, Tel Aviv is frequently cited as the largest pride parade in Asia and the Middle East. That's what the scriptures talk about. And there's other nasty shit that they do there too. All right, like that custom they got with the baby, you know, circumcising the kid with their mouth. I forget what it's called. All right, but it starts with like an M. Disgusting ass people, the Amalekites. It says, and against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. They're encouraging wickedness. They're not implementing the law, statutes, and commandments in the land. They're being wicked. This is the point of the lesson. Anytime heathen nations was in our land, they kept their own culture, their own way of life in our land. All right? So that's it. Verse 6, it says, prophesy therefore concerning the land of Israel, and say unto the mountains, and to the hills, to the rivers, and to the valleys, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I have spoken in my jealousy and in my fury, because ye have borne the shame of the heathen. All right? They have borne the shame of the heathen. How? Because the heathen nations are keeping their own customs, their own way of life, believing in on their own philosophies in our land. They do not serve Yahweh. They do not worship Yahweh Shai. They don't even respect his people, which is the Israelites. All right? They're not holy. That's the point. So now let's go back. Let's go to this now. Now here's another example before we got the promised land. What were those different Canaanite tribes doing? They was committing idolatry and fornication. Deuteronomy 7:1. It says, when Yahweh thy God shall bring thee into the land. What's the land? The promised land of Israel that you read about in Genesis, the 15th chapter, from verses 18 to 21. All right? Whether thou goest to possess it, the promised land of Israel, the true motherland, right? It goes on to say, and have cast out many nations. The Lord didn't say amalgamate amongst them, or they can stay, right? And have cast out many nations before thee. Now it's going into all these Canaanite tribes, Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou, because they was already established and sovereign and independent as a nation. All right? We was established last. We became a nation in captivity. All right? It says, verse 2, and when Yahweh thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them. They kill them with no mercy, and utterly destroy them. Kill them without no mercy. When Yahweh say to kill somebody, kill their ass. All right? Don't second guess it. Don't let them try to win you over with kind words. Oh, I got a family. Slaughter them. Because that's what Yahweh our God said. Right? It said, and when Yahweh our God, and when Yahweh thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, no agreements, right? Nor show mercy unto them. We're not supposed to show mercy unto the heathen nations, all right? In the kingdom of heaven, when we're in our glorified state, ain't gonna be no mercy. We're gonna judge without mercy. They don't got no coming Messiah that's coming to die for their sins. They're gonna always be in that flesh and blood position, all right? Neither shalt thou make marriages with them, right? So this is what the Lord was telling us in this specific generation. And you could tell when you read in the scriptures from Genesis to Deuteronomy, you can tell how wicked the Canaanites were, because the Lord told us plenty of times, plenty of generations. He even told Esau, don't deal with the Canaanite woman. But what Esau gonna do? He gonna deal with the Canaanite woman, because he gonna do what he want to do. He programmed to be wicked. All right, he's programmed to do things as an example for us not to be, which is wicked, following wickedness. All right. So this only applies to this specific generation. Deuteronomy 7:3, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, because the daughter, she don't carry seed. So if an Israelite woman get pregnant by a Canaanite, no matter what tribe it is, then that child that's in her stomach, that's that Canaanite man's seed. That's not an Israelite. Therefore, the promises and the blessings that went from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it wouldn't belong onto that child. Even if the child come out dark-skinned and got some genetics of the mother and look like an Israelite on the outward appearance, that don't matter. It's about seed line. All right? That child will be a Canaanite. It'll be a heathen. The Lord said to kill all of them. Right? It says, thy daughter shalt thou not give unto his son. So these Israelite women out here that's swirling, that's what they call that shit, swirling. You know, when they deal with Edomite men and heathen men, that's some wicked ass shit that you're doing. All right? That's some wicked ass shit. You ain't supposed to be out here having interracial dating and all that stupid ass shit. All right? Because that doesn't benefit your nation. You ain't supposed to raise your kids up to tell them, oh, you can fall in love with whoever they... Look, if I had a daughter, she would know better not to deal with no heathen men. All right? It says, continuing on, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. All right? And it's going to tell you why. It says, for they will turn away thy son from following me. All right? That's why Solomon, he's always used as an example. When he got older in age, what did he do? He started setting up the different groves and pillars and altars to these strange gods, to the gods of his heathen wives, a.k.a. concubines, a.k.a. strange wives. All right? Continuing on, it says, so that's what the Lord is saying. In this specific generation, we're getting ready to go inherit the promised land. Don't show no mercy. Kill everybody that you see there, period. Don't make no marriages with them. Just kill them. Show them no mercy. Just be full blast with them, right? The Lord is saying what? Don't marry them, because if you fall in love and you keep them alive, then your action of love is going to lead to you sinning, all right? It's going to lead to you worshiping their gods. Because when you deal with a heathen woman, she's supposed to come under your authority, your household, worship your God, keep your customs. Deuteronomy 7:4, for they will turn away thy son from following me. So these people, they was in the promised land. What were they doing there? They was committing idolatry, fornication. That's why the Lord said to get rid of them. All right? You're supposed to get rid of them. The Lord don't want heathens in his promised land, because this is the type of shit they be doing. It says, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of Yahweh be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. Right? Suddenly. It says, but thus shall ye deal with them, ye shall destroy their altars. This is what they was doing in the promised land. They had altars to strange gods and break down their images, right? Graven images. We know the Lord hate graven images. Isaiah 42:8. It goes on to say, and cut down their groves. It says, continuing on, and burn their graven images with fire. So this is what they was doing in the promised land. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God, Yahweh our God. The Lord thy God have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. All right? So we above all nations. Why? Because the Lord gave us the law, statutes, and commandments. All right? Ultimately, when you trace that chosen seed line of the sons of God, you can read about that in Luke, the 3rd chapter. They still exist, but they're known as the Israelites today. All right? So there you go. So ain't no equality. The Lord is racist. He loves his people above all other people. The other people he don't care about. All right? So that's it with that. So I give you 2 examples of when heathen nations, when they're in the promised land of Israel, the type of things that be going on, which is why the Lord told us, don't show no mercy to them, don't amalgamate with them, don't even marry with them, destroy their altars, which all that stuff goes back to what? Their culture, their way of life. The Lord said to destroy it. All right? Now this is 2 Kings 17:20. It says, and the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, which is the heathen nations, until he had cast them out of his sight, kicked us out of the land, right? For he rent Israel from the house of David, right? He rent, meaning he took it. And they made Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, king. Jeroboam was wicked. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following Yahweh and made them sin a great sin, right? Scriptures talk about the sin of Samaria. It says, for the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did, they departed not from them. So Jeroboam, he was a wicked king. You know, the scriptures talk about as is the judge, so is the people. So Jeroboam was a wicked king, governed the people, then the people gonna be wicked. It says, for the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did, they departed not from them. It says, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight. That's what the Lord did. All right? He removed us out of the promised land of Israel. As he has said by all his servants the prophets, so was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. So you had a lot of Israelites that was living amongst the Assyrians. So when you read the scriptures, oh, the Assyrians fasted and the Most High temporarily during Jonah's time of prophesying had mercy upon them, is because a lot of them were Israelites. Didn't the Lord say that he has made us prophets unto the nations? So you had a large influx of northern kingdom, right? Israelites, lost 10 tribes, that was amongst the Assyrians. They was there for decades, all right? I did a video on that, proving that. So now, here's some more examples. The cities of Israel filled with strangers. It says, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Qatar, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sarvim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria, instead of the children of Israel. They possessed Samaria and built in the cities thereof. Okay, so now we're dealing with what? Heathens that's living in our land. Let's see what type of customs they kept. Did they keep the Lord's statutes and commandments? Nope. Let's see though. Verse 25, it says, and so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not Yahweh. They don't fear Yahweh. I don't know. And then you got these stupid ass niggas that's talking about Gentiles can be saved. The Lord don't want Gentiles in his land. Continuing on. It says 2 Kings 17:25. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling that they feared not the Lord. Why the fuck would the Lord want you in his land if you don't fear him? And then you're not even the seed of the promise. It says, continuing on, therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. The Lord sent lions. He was sending plagues on them. Why? Because they was keeping their own customs. They wasn't keeping the Lord's statutes and commandments. If you're going to be living in Yahweh's promised land, you got to keep his Lord's statutes and commandments so that he can bless the land. If you're not keeping his Lord's statutes and commandments in the promised land of Israel, then you're going to open up yourself for judgment and plagues. All right? Verse 26, wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the Most High in the land. The heathen nations don't know the manner of the Most High in the land. All right? They're not going to be keeping no land Sabbaths. They're not going to be keeping no Sabbaths. They're not going to be keeping the Lord's statutes and commandments. The laws that apply for the men, the women, you know, the cattle, so forth and so on. When you go to war, all kind of particular things concerning judgments and everyday life, the priesthood. The heathens know not the manner of the Most High. Continuing on, it says, I'm going to read it again. 2 Kings 17:26. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of Yahweh of the land. Know not the manner of the Most High of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the Most High of the land. It says, verse 27, it says, then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry thither one of the priests. So the heathen, they don't know the manner of the Most High of the land. So now this particular Assyrian king, I believe it's Shalmaneser V, he's saying that what? Now call for one of the priests, one of the Levitical priests, to teach us the ways of the land so we can stop being killed by lions. All right? And that's how it's going to be in the kingdom. When we're in our glorified state under the new covenant, we're going to have to be priests and teach these heathens the Lord's statutes and commandments. And if they don't, they won't get rain. All right? And other particular judgments will happen to them. So it goes on to say, whom ye brought from thence, and let them, the Levitical priests, go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the Most High of the land. The heathen don't know the manner of the Most High. What part y'all don't understand? They're never going to be a part of our heritage. It says, then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. Howbeit, look, check this out. Howbeit, every nation made gods of their own. So here you have this Assyrian king. He just heard an account that lions was killing the people. Why were the lions killing the people? Because the Most High put the spirit on the lions to kill the people, because they was keeping their customs of idolatry, fornication. They was keeping their own culture, right? And then check this out. Howbeit, so then the Assyrian king, he sends for one of the Levitical priests to go into the promised land of Israel to teach the heathens how to fear the Most High, so they can know the man of the Most High. And this is what the hell they did. Verse 29, howbeit every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. Even what a priest did, they still didn't fucking listen. Like, this is crazy. And then you got guys that talk about Gentiles can be saved, heathens can be saved. You stupid. When you start talking like that, it's proof that you sold out. There's really no other way to explain it. Verse 30, it says, and the men of Babylon, so it's going into the different idols that they made. It says, and the men of Babylon made Succoth, Banath, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima. These are different idols, different gods that these heathens worship. This is what they doing in the promised land. It says, and the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Servivites burnt their children in the fire to Adrammelech and Anamelech, right? Probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's the gods that they worship, which is Molech, the gods of Seraphim. So they feared the Lord, and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high place. They feared the Lord and served their own gods. All right? Check that out. They feared the Lord, but served their own gods, after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. Unto this day they do after the former manners. They fear not the Lord. The heathens don't fear the Lord. They're going to worship their own gods. They're going to keep their own culture, their own way of life. All right? It says, neither do they after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and the commandment which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. The Lord only gave the law to us. So each nation is only going to do what they're programmed to do. Whatever culture belongs to that specific nation, that specific seed, that's what they're programmed to keep and do. All right? The Israelites, we keep the laws, statutes, and commandments to the best of our abilities, right? This particular laws you just naturally keep. That's because we program that way. All right? It goes on to say, yep. It says, 35, with whom the Lord had made a covenant and charged them, saying, ye shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt with great power and a stretched out arm, him shall ye fear, and him shall ye worship, and to him shall ye do sacrifice. Right? Not to other gods. It says, and the statutes and the ordinances and the law and the commandment which he wrote for you, ye shall observe to do forevermore. And ye shall not fear other gods. So we're not supposed to fear other gods. All right? You got a person that's a witch or a warlock, or even if it's another Israelite, you know, wishing for your death in the name of another god, tell them fuck you. Ain't nothing gonna happen. Why? Because they ain't no enchantment against Jacob. Ain't no enchantment against the elect of the nation of Israel. All right? you don't worship Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, then there is going to be enchantment against you. It's going to work. It goes on to say, yep, and the covenant that I have made with you, ye shall not forget, neither shall ye fear other gods. But Yahweh your God ye shall fear, right, as well as Yahweh Shai as well. And he shall deliver you out of the hand of all your enemies. It says, so that's pretty much it. Let me keep going. It says, howbeit they did not hearken, but they did after the former manner. So these nations feared the Lord and served their graven images, both their children and their children's children, as did their fathers, so do they unto this day. The heathen nations, they don't fear Yahweh. They don't fear Yahweh Shai. They don't worship Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. All right? They're going to keep their own customs. Why? Because that's what the Lord gave them. That's it. So now, let's go here, right? So this is why I typed in kings that place heathens into Israel Bible. This is what popped up. The Assyrian king Shalmaneser V and Sargon II conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. Following this, King Ashuradan repopulated the cities of Samaria. This is why Yahweh Shai said, don't go into the cities of Samaria in Matthew the 10th chapter, which I'm going to read. It says, with various heathen peoples, including Babylonians, Cuthites, and Avites. This resettlement is the biblical origin of the Samaritans, right? It says the Bible records these specific kings and the repopulation events. It goes on to say, Shalmaneser V besieged Samaria and initiated the exile of the northern tribes of Israel. Sargon II completed the conquest and deportation of the Israelites. It says Ashuradan replaced the exiled Israelites by bringing in foreign peoples from across the Assyrian Empire to inhabit the land. Tiglath-Pileser III began the earlier waves of conquering northern regions of Israel and deported its inhabitants. All right? And I just read this account to you. It says, this specific historical policy of replacing conquered peoples was a deliberate Assyrian strategy to prevent rebellion and culturally assimilate the region. The resulting intermingling of the remaining Israelites with the relocated pagans, aka natural Gentiles, heathens, led to a syncretic religion that blended the worship of the God of Israel with foreign idolatry. All right? So that's the point. That's the point. So now, let's read this. This is why the Lord said this. This is Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10 and verse 5, right? It says, these 12, when you read the verses above, it's going into the 12 disciples. These 12 Yahweh Shai sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles. All right? Don't go into the way of the Gentiles, because the gospel is not for them. The new covenant is not for them. The old covenant wasn't for them, right? It says, and into any of the into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. I just read the whole history to you, why the Lord don't want his 12 disciples to go there. Because at this particular time, now you got an influx of heathen nations that's living in Samaria, doing all type of idolatry and fornication. That would be a waste of time to go there and prophesy. All right? It's just like you going to the hood and prophesying. Ain't no hope there. The sun ain't shining there. Them people minds is full with demons and doctrines of devils. They don't want to change. That'd be a waste of time. You probably still had a small number of Israelites that was living amongst Samaria, but the Lord said don't go there. It would be a waste of time. It says, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. All right? That's who the gospel is for. So check this out. In Matthew chapter 10, this is what I typed in on Google, Matthew 10, verse 5 and 6, right? It says, in Matthew 10, 5 and 6, Yahweh Shai instructs his 12 apostles before sending them out, saying, Do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. This initial restriction established a priority to teach the gospel to the Jews, right? The Israelite people first, because that's who the gospel had to go to first, all right? It says the derivative or directive, Yahushua commanded the disciples to avoid Gentile, right? Gentile nations and Samaritan territories during the specific mission. The target, their focus was directed squarely on the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So that's it. That's the point. So now, here's the account. Here's one of the descendants of the heathen nations that was placed in our land. All right? Because this is where you get the story of the Samaritan woman, which more than likely, she had to be a Hamite. And even if she wasn't a Hamite, she was a heathen nation. She was a descendant of the repopulated cities being controlled by heathens now, under the Assyrians' authority. All right? So this is St. John chapter 4. And I'll just get into the point now. Verse 20. This is what the woman says. She said, our fathers worship in this mountain, right? Because she's a descendant of what? 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. It says, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Yeah, men ought to worship 3 times a year, right? Men. It says, Yahushua saith unto her, woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Yahushua is telling you that this woman is a heathen. She's a Samaritan. She's a heathen Samaritan. She's not no Ephraimite. She's not one of the descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. She's a heathen. All right? It says, continuing on, Yahushua saith unto her, woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. So Yahushua is making a clear distinction. Salvation is for the Jews. I'm not sent unto you. Even if you did believe in me, you're a heathen. The promises, they don't pertain to you. My mission is not for you. The purpose of my life is not for you, because you're not under the law. You're a Samaritan. All right? It says, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers, which is the elect of the nation of Israel, shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him, right? The elect of the nation of Israel. Yahweh is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Which also goes along with what? His description on how he looked. Him being a so-called black man. When you read Daniel 7 and 9 and plenty of other scriptures. All right? So that's it with that. So now let me end it with this. It says, it was actually Ezra. That's what I forgot to bring out. Ezra, the 4th chapter. Just to give you one more example of AHSHAWAR, an Assyrian king, putting heathens into our land. The Samaritan woman, she was descendants of these people, right? So now this is Ezra chapter 4. And let's see. Okay, here we go. Ezra chapter 4, verse 8. This is a letter to King Artaxerxes, right? Xerxes. It says, Rehum, the chancellor, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter against Jerusalem to Artaxerxes, the king, in this sort. It says, then wrote Rehum, the chancellor, and Shimshai, the scribe, and the rest of their companions, the Dananites, right? They got all these crazy names, as you can see there, right? Different heathen nations. The point is in verse 10. And the rest of the nations whom the great and noble Asnapper, right, brought over and set in the cities of Samaria, and the rest that are on this side the river, and at such a time. All right? So the point is, when you read Ezra chapter 4, verses 9 and 10, the point in 10, you have another account of an Assyrian king putting heathens into our land. This is why Yahushua said, don't go into Samaria, because at that present time, that city was given over to idolatry and fornication, and there was no righteous fruit over there. All right? So Lord willing, you was edified by the lesson. Shalom.